Canada, and I participated in the ICSBC competition in 2020. My team and I were fortunate to win the Best Presentation Award as well as the runner-up for the Best Documentation Award. So I'm here to give you some tips as to how to succeed in the competition and how to work well with your team members. So I have tips for the CEO, COO, CFO, CMO, and then finally tips for the whole team. Number one for COO, understand that leadership is not just about authority. Just because you're the boss doesn't mean you can boss people around. It's much more about servant leadership and seeing how you can serve each member of the team. Second tip for the CEO is your job is to do everything and nothing all at the same time. What I mean by that is you have to be aware of everything that's going on with the company at all times, but delegate the responsibility to each of your team members so that you're able to manage them effectively. My third tip for the CEO is to create a schedule and stick to it. This is super important. When you're creating a schedule, make sure you plan tons of margin time for each of your members to get the work done. This should be schedules that go on weekly and monthly, and all the way into the competition, you should have daily schedules so your team knows what's going on. Next is tips for the COO. Recognize that your job is super critical to the success of the team. You're the one determining how many orders you should put in and whether or not the company should expand their factories so that they can have more produce or products for the customers. So recognize that your job is super important. And because of that, the second tip is you always need to be aware of the what, how, and why. Whenever you make a decision, make sure you know what the decision is, how it's being implemented, and why you're implementing it, whether it be an increase in demand because of the forecast or because of a reaction to the customer or competition. The final tip for the COO is communicate what you need to the team. Now, when you're deep into the weeds of operations, you'll find a lot of issues or problems that the other team might not be able to perceive immediately. So it's super important that you communicate those things to the team and to the CEO so that they're able to make good decisions about it. Now, tips for the CFO. Now, my biggest suggestion, even though I'm not an accountant or anything like that, is to use templates and link sheets whenever possible. This is important so that you can cut down on work and focus on the things that really matter. For example, making sure that your balance sheet balance. Super important, and your judges will definitely notice if they don't. The last tip that I have for the COO is to give everyone a summary of the material weekly so that everybody is updated on the financial health of the company and therefore is able to make better decisions. Now moving on to tips for the CMO. Once your team decides what the strategy is, my first observation is to understand that strategy, whether it be a low-cost strategy or a differentiation strategy. Understanding it and sticking with it, even if it looks like the competition might be winning with a different strategy or that your customers aren't responding as well. Recognizing that you have something special to offer is really important instead of flip-flopping between different strategies. The next tip that I would have is to observe other teams. Now, similarly, other teams are going to be having other strategies and hopefully sticking with those strategies. But recognize what they're doing to try and attract customers, whether it be increasing advertising or salespeople, and pick up tips from them where you can. Of course, stay true to your own strategy, but at the same time, you can definitely learn from your competitors to learn the market better and use what they're using to be successful. My last recommendation for the CMO is to make recommendations to the CEO. This is because in terms of specific responsibilities, you probably have the least, but that gives you a lot of time to observe the competition, observe how you're doing as a company, and make suggestions to the CEO. And of course, the CEO, please do take these recommendations seriously. Finally, for the whole team, I would say that you should cultivate and honor and respect culture. What that means is that each member of the team respects one another and are ready to work really hard. This is not an easy competition, and if you win, it's due in large part to the fact that you put in your blood, sweat, and tears. So in addition to over-communicating, you want to make sure that you give grace even when people mess up, because that's a culture of honor and respect. Last big tip, use your advisor. He's fantastic. That's all from me.